Good morning.
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 Good morning.
Good morning. I take Xuan is your first name, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Good. So welcome, Xuan. Nice to have you.
Nice for having me.
So we will wait probably another 3 minutes or so for people to really connect and come on. So something like 1 or 2 minutes after the hour, we'll get started.
Okay, sounds good. So are we supposed to have like the whole 1 hour presenting or leaving like 5 or 10
Good
minutes
question. No, it's kind of 40-minute presentation, 35 to 40 minutes.
Oh, I see.
And then if people have any immediate questions, they will let me know through the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then after, once you're done, then we have live open discussions.
Okay, that sounds good.
Um,
So yeah, I'll keep it at around 40 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that would be perfect. That would be perfect.
Okay.
We have looked at other things, but I mean, the typical economic seminar where you can just interrupt doesn't work well in a virtual setting. So
Yeah, I see. Yeah. It's, yeah, so you're gonna help like moderate the questions posted on chat if there are any. So I don't
yes,
need to...
I will. People will either let me know through the chat if they have a question, or they will directly type the question into the chat, and then I will just call on them. And then if we get to a point where there are no questions or no one posts anything in this chat, then people can then we'll just say open-minded and just chime in.
Okay, sounds good.
It's also 9 a.m. for you, right? The same time as me.
Yes, we're in the same time zone.
Okay, so let's get started and people can connect as things move on. So welcome everyone to the seminar series at the East Asian Pacific Chief Economist Office Research Center in Kuala Lumpur. It's our great pleasure to have Xuan with us this morning. Xuan has a PhD fairly recently from 2019 from Columbia University in New York, and is currently at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And Xuan will be talking about spillover demoralization of workplace unfairness, evidence from Chinese public schools. So I had the chance to look at the paper and read it beforehand. He has absolutely stunning data on this. And just the usual housekeeping. So remember that if there are any immediate questions you need for understanding the paper better, please let me know through the chat. Otherwise, Xuan will talk for about 40 minutes. And after that, we have about 20 minutes to discuss our paper. So without much further ado, Xuan.
Okay, thanks very much, Tobias, for the introduction. So today I'm going to talk about the teacher promotion systems in Chinese public high schools and see how the operation of that system would affect the performance of teachers in schools. That's basically the idea. Okay. So we know that providing good incentive schemes and good managerial practices are very important for the production of organizations, both in the private sector and in the public sectors as well. And there's a growing literature trying to identify useful practices to improve the productivity of public sector services like schools and hospitals. And in schools particularly, there is a growing literature trying to identify the useful management and governance practices, and also the design of evaluation systems, performance pay systems, and hiring and retention rules, that kind of thing. And to understand the practices to improve productivity, this question better, social interactions and social incentives are a very important angle, and its impact on productivity is actually can be both positive and negative. And the negative impacts that most of the existing literature has documented come from mainly two sides: the top-down social preferences by bosses or managers that can distort the resource allocation of the task assignment or the job assignment or other resources among the subordinates. That leads to harm to the productivity of the whole organization. Or it could be workers' bottom-up incentive responses to their perceived unfair treatment received by managers. And these has been documented mostly in the field experiment setting, basically, for example, giving you unequal pay and see how that would affect workers' incentives in their effort provision, that sort of thing. And in this paper, we're trying to make some innovation in the sense that in the previous studies, either the top-down bias or the bottom-up responses, they're sort of investigated separately. And in this empirical setting of this paper, we can kind of combine the both. And first, to see how they interact with each other. And second, to also show another aspect or another mechanism where the bottom-up incentive response can operate, which is through the spillover impact. Meaning that it's not about how the boss treats you, it's about how the boss treats your colleagues that can actually affect people's effort provision in their jobs. I'll explain what I mean more specifically in details later. To be more specific, in this paper, I use a set of newly digitized administrative personnel records, plus a revealed preference type survey designed to retrospectively measure teachers' fairness notions, to study the impacts of school principals' bias decisions in teacher promotion decisions on the teachers' performances, measured in terms of their value added on students' test scores and their turnover rate. And I do that in the setting of Chinese public high schools. And I also study a transparency reform, which took place during the sample period of my data, which is basically a mandated disclosure of the promotion applicants' profiles within the whole school so that everyone can see the qualifications of the applicants for promotion, and also they can see who you promoted, whether you're promoting the right guy, right? So this information transparency, I also study how that affects the incentives of school principals as well as teachers, and how that affects the school productivity as a whole. And here's the preview of findings. First, we do see evidence of social connection-based favoritism in the sense that applicants who are tied to the incumbent school principal via hometown or college ties had higher promotion rates, controlling for their qualification characteristics. And second, teachers do perceive unfairness from school principals' decisions, because the actual promotion results deviated from what we get from the surveys about what the teachers perceive as fair. And the impact of the teachers' perceived promotion unfairness has adverse incentive effects, basically. And the incentive effects are spillover or indirect, in the sense it's the non-applicant teachers who lowered their value added, which is their performance, the intensive margin performance or effort provision, you can say. And they also increase their quitting probabilities. That's the extensive margin. And this lowered value added specifically causes substantial harm to school-wide performance in student test scores and teacher. And the quitting of good quality teachers would lead to a reduction in the teacher quality pool, in the quality of the teacher pool in the school after unfair promotion decisions made by school principals. And by investigating the heterogeneity in the adverse incentive spillover effects, we can provide suggestive evidence on the mechanisms that the value-added effect, the intensive margin effect, can be explained by teachers' horizontal social preferences for others and their fairness norms, while the quitting effect can be explained by the teachers' career concerns and their learning of their employees, and the learning of their employers in the sense of the principals. And the internal information transparency reform I mentioned can reduce promotion favoritism and improved student test scores. So in this paper, I basically contributed to 3 strands of literature. First, it is one of the first studies to document spillover demoralization effect of fairness violations across workplace. There's survey evidence that people do have fairness norms for others, they care about others. And also there are studies showing that living or working in an environment with sexual or racial discrimination creates a disamenity. And here, what this paper shows, using field evidence, that workers can respond adversely in their effort provision to fairness violations suffered by their co-workers in the workplace. And second, this paper is also related to the welfare implications of information transparency. A lot of papers have documented the impact of external transparency, like media and audit, and see how that can improve the government's accountability and that sort of thing, or reducing corruption. And here, what we're looking at is internal transparency, which means making what the bosses and what the workers do and their performance clearer among people within an organization can also have an impact on the performance of people and on the behavior of different agents and the performance of the organization as a whole. And lastly, it's related to the Chinese political economy literature. By contributing to documenting the important roles of hometown and college ties in the Chinese setting. our previous studies have been looking at the bureaucracy and academia. And in this paper, I'm looking at a more grassroots level of setting, a more grassroots level, looking at the functioning of the employee promotion system in Chinese public sectors, which is also applied to the Chinese public high schools. So it's basically a small setting, but the same system applies to basically a broader population of public sector employees in China. So we can also borrow insights from here. Okay. So now let me introduce to you guys a little bit the institutional background and the data we have. So what do I mean by teacher promotion? It's basically a title elevation in the professional title evaluation system in Chinese public schools. Basically, it's an annual evaluation, and there are 3 titles for professionals or teachers in Chinese public schools, because there are 3 titles, and I name it as junior, middle, and senior, and therefore there are 2 elevations, from junior to middle and from middle to senior. And in my setting, what I define as a promotion is a middle to senior title elevation, because this is the more competitive one. So basically the junior to middle is basically just fulfilling like the required tenure and not doing anything wrong, and you can be basically automatically promoted. But the middle to senior promotion is more high stake and competitive. So some of the teachers remain a middle rank teacher when they retire. So it's not everyone can be promoted to the senior. So you can also like think of it as even in an academia setting, the tenure system, right? Whether a assistant professor is getting tenured, and here it's the title elevation of high school teachers. And this promotion will increase the fixed wage of teachers. So there's no performance pay, at least in like the official like payroll. And when you're elevated, you can basically receive like a sharp increase in your wage. And eligible teachers submit application files to be first reviewed by the school principals, and then the school principals would write recommendations, which are crucial for the final decisions made by city level committee. Right? So the school principals are just intermediate like decision makers. They're not the final decision makers, but their opinions are actually crucial. The promotion is competitive among applicants within each school year due to the quota. And teachers can apply multiple times after fulfilling mandatory tenure requirements. Promotion results do not instantaneously affect class assignment and workload. So you're still teaching the same classes, you're still teaching, doing the same kind of job, but it's just an elevation of your title. So it's a little bit different from like promotion in other settings. You're promoted to like a managerial role, for example, then you're doing like different types of jobs. So it's harder to like compare your productivity before and after the promotion, because you're not doing the same thing in many settings. But it's not the case here, because the teachers still doing the same kind of daily routine work. It's just their titles are elevated. So we can still compare the pre and post promotion productivity using the extent to which they can raise their students' test scores, which is the value-added measure, which I'm going to introduce later. And the transparency reform in our sample cities is basically a mandatory disclosure of promotion application profiles or the formatted CVs of the promotion applicants to peer teachers within the school. So everyone can see like their qualifications, the qualifications of applicants, and they can also see in the end who gets promoted, right? So they have a sense whether it's the right people who get promoted, right? And after these mandatory disclosure, it makes it more clear, right? It makes it more clear who should be promoted and who gets promoted. Before the the policy reform, you have a vague sense of how good your colleagues are doing, but not so clear, right? So basically, this information transparency reform is basically making any bias more evident, making any bias more visible and evident to the workers, to the teachers within the school. And we have the cross-city policy rollout from 2005 to 2015 in the sample cities. So we can use definitive event study type of strategy to actually analyze the impact of the introduction of the policy. And in the sample, we have 112 public high schools in the 4 largest cities in the Chinese province. We have the newly digitized records of teacher promotion application CVs and their promotion results. So with the rich information from their CVs, we can control for applicants' qualifications and then construct their promotability qualification scores, right? So as to control for that and see whether social connections can add something to your promotion rate. And we also have the personnel records of teachers and principals. So we know about the university they graduated from and their hometown, so that we can construct social ties with both hometown ties and college ties between school principals and teachers. We also get the student test score data at class by subject level in the city level administered end of year exams of each cohort. And using that, we can estimate the time varying value added of each teacher. That is basically, we can like track in each academic year the extent to which each teacher is able to improve his or her students' test scores. And value added is like an important measure, and actually it can actually predict the future later in life well-being and development earnings of people. The value added of teachers in their primary school, the studies have shown that. And I guess it's even like more the case in Eastern Asia setting, right? Compared to those studies which are based on the US and the Europe. So it's naturally, I think, a good measure to use to value to measure the performance and the fluctuation in performance of school teachers in China. And that is our administrative data. And as I mentioned, I also conducted a survey on a subset of the administrative data of schools, 6 schools in 2 cities in 2018. And what I did is I presented the de-identified application CVs of applicants in the school to teachers in another school and asked them to evaluate the CVs and pick who they think should be promoted. The idea is to simulate the teacher's post-transparency reform information set and ask them to make the decision, ask them to sit in the place of the school principal and to make the decision about their applicant colleagues, so as to elicit the revealed preferences of these teachers on their fairness notions regarding what kind of teachers should actually get promoted, what qualifies as a promotee. So now I'm going to share with you the first set of results. That is social tie-based favoritism does exist, and teachers perceive that as unfair. So to basically show you how what's the impact of social ties on the promotion prospects of applicant teachers, these 2 event study graphs pretty much paints the picture. Panel A graph is for the hometown tie between applicants and school principals, and panel B is the college tie, graduating from the same college between the school principal and the applicant. Let's focus on panel A to explain what these two graphs show. In panel A, basically, we have an event in time 0, which is a switch of a school principal. And the new principal comes from a different hometown from the old one, right? So that's an event which took place in time 0. And there are 3 types of promotion applicants. Those who are untied to the previous principal but tied to the new one, and those who are tied to the previous one but not tied to the new one. And the third group is applicants who are never tied to the previous one and the new one. And let's track their promotion rates upon the arrival of this new principal. We see that for the never tied, which is the red dots, their promotion rates remain low. And for the untied to tied ones, right, they didn't have the tie before, but upon the arrival of the new principal, they have this tie. We see their promotion probably jumps up. And for those who lose their tie to the principal upon the arrival of the new principal, their promotion rates go down immediately at time 0 upon the arrival of the new principal. So that this basically shows that we do see like the identity of the new principal have an impact on the promotion rates of the applicants who are tied or not tied to him or her. That's basically the idea. And if we run regression analysis, we can see that actually hometown or college ties raise the promotion applicants' promotion likelihood by around 100%. And the effect is larger for smaller common hometown and for same department college alumni. So basically the idea is if we are from the same hometown, if it's a small hometown, then the tie is stronger. If we are from the same hometown, but it's a large hometown, then we don't like feel belong together. So that makes sense. And the college tie is basically if the school principal is a physics teacher, for example, and the school principal is no longer teaching, like he's no longer doing any teaching duties. But if he was like previously a physics teacher and he graduated from the same physics department of the same university, then the impact of the tie is stronger than it has on a chemistry teacher graduated from the same university. So that's basically the idea. So we see the impact of the social tie, and when the social tie is stronger, the impact is even stronger. Okay. And what do teachers feel about this? So what I do is then I replace the dependent variable in this previous analysis, right, which is the school principal's promotion decision with the survey respondents' choices, and estimates this like coefficients to actual applicants' characteristics in the past to infer perceived fair promotion results. Right. So basically, I can like construct who should actually be promoted in the past. And then I contrast the inferred promotion results with the actual promotion results. Then I can identify which applicants can be grouped into deservingly promoted, deservingly unpromoted, undeservingly promoted, and undeservingly unpromoted. Right? So there are like basically 4 types. I can basically label each applicant in the past into these 4 types. And then within a school year, I construct a measure of perceived promotion unfairness. That is the percentage of promotees regarded as undeservingly promoted. So basically, and then this measure varies across different years. and across different teachers because of their different fairness notions elicited from the survey. So, and when we analyze what the teachers think, we find that survey teachers, they value teaching performances more than what the school principals actually did. So in this sense, the undeserving promotees in the past are mainly the low value added applicants who are socially connected to the principal. Right? So it's indeed the case that promoting low value added or low performing applicants who are socially tied to yourself is viewed as unfair. Right? These behaviors by the school principals are viewed as unfair by the teachers. And in the following analysis, the identifying variation we're using is the within school principal teacher across year variation in these undeserving measure. That is, we are tracking the same teacher in the same school working under the same principal across different years, right? Across different years. So in every year, there is a value of these undeserving measure, whether this year looks like more fair or this year looks like more unfair. And the variation across years within the same teacher, within the same school will be giving us the identification variation here. So now let's see the results of the on the impact of perceived promotion unfairness on teachers' behavior. First, let's look at the applicants, right? The applicant teachers, because we can actually group teachers into the applicant teachers and the non-applicant teachers. And actually, the non-applicant teachers consist of around 80% of the whole teacher pool. So the majority is non-applicants. Now let's first look at the applicants. And what we see is that there is basically no average direct effects of perceived promotion unfairness on applicants' behavior. And why that is the case? Actually, when we delve in a little bit deeper, we see that it's because the promotion unfairness motivates the favored guys and disincentivizes the biased against guys. So if I'm favored, if I benefit from the bias, the favoritism, then actually that incentivizes me to work harder. But if I am the discriminated against a guy, then I shirk, right? So then basically these two effects offset each other. So on average, we don't see like an impact of a higher level of promotion unfairness on the value add created by applicant teachers or their quitting probability. But when we look at the non-applicants teachers, we see an impact here. So the average quitting rate of non-applicants under the average level of unfairness is 16% higher than the fair counterfactual in the subsequent year. And we do see this impact to be persistent, at least for 3 years. Although it's dying down. That's the extensive margin quitting. And for the intensive margin value added, we see that an average value added of non-applicants under the average level of unfairness is 0.28 standard deviation lower than the fair counterfactual in the subsequent year. Right? So basically, the idea is we don't actually see an impact on the applicants, for which the application results directly matter, because those who are favored, they work harder, and those who are not favored, they work less hard. But when you look at the indirect people, the non-applicants, we see an adverse impact there. Let's skip the robustness checks here and try to dig a little bit deeper into the mechanism by looking at the heterogeneity, right? Remember, we have two margins, the intensive margin and the extensive margin. We'll first look at intensive margin, the value added of teachers. We see that the value added effect, we find limited evidence of learning about principles, because the effect is not decreasing with the principal's tenure, and it's persistent even after the principal has left. Right? So if it's about like learning how bad the principles are, then you would expect the learning to be the biggest at the beginning of the principal's tenure, due to according to the Bayesian learning principle. And also you would expect when the principal has left, then you should not see an effect, because now you're faced with a new principal, and then what the old principle does and what you learn about the old principle has nothing to do with your decision under a new principle. But that's not the case. So with the value added effect, there's limited evidence of learning about principles. And interestingly, we also see the effect most pronounced among non-applicants who interact a lot with perceived victims of promotion unfairness. That is, we see a higher adverse impact on the value added of non-applicants if these non-applicants are teaching the same cohort as a perceived promotion victim, or they're teaching the same subject as the perceived promotion victim, or they are sharing the same hometown or college ties with the perceived victim. By perceived victim, I mean those who are undeservingly denied promotion according to the categorization of the four types, if you recall, that I discussed before. Right? So it's basically when you have a close contact with those who suffer from the unfairness, then you are less tolerant and you retaliate in some sense, and you are demoralized to a larger extent. And also the effect is more pronounced among non-applicants who are already promoted, especially those who are deservingly promoted themselves in the past. That is, basically, we see the impact to be strongest among the senior rank teachers. Right? Recall the promotion is from middle rank to senior rank. So the senior rank guys are already promoted. So whether the younger guys are promoted or not has nothing to do with the senior rank guys, their own benefits, their salary or whatever. But they still care, right? They still care. It means nothing about the promotion prospects of these guys. So it's not about like learning about who the school principals promote and what's the implication for myself. There's no implication for the senior guys. Yet they respond in the most harsh manner. And also, if you look at the right panel, we see that if a senior rank teacher who himself or herself was deservingly promoted, he or she is less tolerant of the ongoing promotion unfairness. That is, if I haven't benefited from this unfairness, then I am less tolerant of this whole mess. That's to put in words. Right. So grouping all this evidence together, we can say that the mechanisms where these value-added effects operate through is basically through fairness norms for others and horizontal social preferences between peers at work. I care about my coworkers being fairly treated, and if not, that's going to demoralize me. That's the idea. And what about the quitting? The extensive margin. We're going to see a different picture here. We see the quitting effect. There is evidence of information updating about principles, because in fact it's decreasing with the principal's length of term, and it disappears after the principal has left. So it indicates it's about learning about the current principal in office that can actually affect myself. And also the effect is most pronounced among prospective applicants. That is the middle ranked teachers who will in the future apply for the senior rank, right? It's those guys who who are most likely to quit their job in the school after seeing unfair promotion. And it's these guys, especially with high value added, and these guys who are socially unconnected to the current principal, which also makes sense because you see this current principal is biased in favor of his or her friends, and I'm not his or her friends, then I see my prospect dampened, and then I would like to consider other outside options. That's the idea. So the mechanisms behind the value-added response and the quitting response are a little bit different, and the former points to fairness norms for others, and the latter one points to more selfish incentives of career concerns. Okay. And after like portraying the mechanisms, let's go to look at the impact of perceived promotion unfairness on school-wide performance. And it's non-surprising because we see the high-quality middle-ranked teachers are more likely to leave the school after unfair promotion. So the school level, like average teacher of value added, will drop because you lose good teachers, right, after an unfair promotion. That's what's shown in the left panel of the graph. And in the right panel of the graph, we see the students' graduation exam score dropping after unfair promotion. That makes sense because you see a drop in the value added of teachers on student test scores. So you also see a drop in their test scores in the graduation exam of students. That's unsurprising, but a little bit more interesting result is the drop in the entrance exam score of students, which is shown by the blue dots here. And that actually comes from these like downward spiral of things. Because in China, and I guess in many other contexts, is that when you have your graduating cohort performing really well in the graduation exam and go to good colleges, then you're going to attract better students in your incoming cohort, right? But so when your graduation cohort's performance is negatively affected, you're also less attractive to the incoming students, therefore leading to a decrease in the entrance exam score as well. And now let's talk about the last set of results, which is the impact of the information transparency reform on the performance, on the behavior of teachers in school principals and the school performance as a whole. As I mentioned before, because of the rollout of the policy in different cities in different years, we can use different diff or triple diff strategies exploiting the different timing of the reform in each city. And the findings are that non-applicant teachers' response to a given level of promotion unfairness is around 40% harsher post-reform. That makes sense because the same level of promotion unfairness after the information transparency reform, you can see it more clearly, right? It's more evident, it's more salient to you, and therefore the response, the adverse response is harsher post reform. And what would the school principals respond to this? Actually, the teachers' perceived promotion unfairness dropped by around 50% post-reform. That is when like the school principals sort of know that what they do will be exposed to the teachers in the school. They are less biased. They become less biased. Right? It could be that they feel the social pressure, or it could be they care about the production. They care about the value added that these teachers produce, and foreseeing that teachers will respond negatively and more harshly to their unfairness, they come to behave more fair, right? It could be both, the rationale behind them, but the change is that school principals become less biased. And when we look at the school-wide performance, that's the student test scores in the provincial level graduation exam, it's also raised after the transparency reform, which is shown in the right panel of these event study graph. So it's basically when a city introduced this transparency reform, the city is performing better relative to other cities in this province level administered college entrance exam. So basically introducing this transparency reform is good for making school principals less biased and good for improving the test results of the students in the schools in the city. Okay, so let me quickly recap the findings. Right, there are like several sets of findings here, and I know like it's a little bit loaded. Let me just quickly recap that. Social connection-based favoritism existed in teacher promotion decisions in Chinese public high schools. That's an observation. And as a response, non-applicant teachers shirk and quit, resulting in worsened school-wide performance. And the shirking effect, the value-added effect, is explained by teachers' horizontal social preferences and fairness norms, while the quitting effect can be explained by teachers' career concerns in a more selfish fashion, not caring about others, but caring about what you learn about the principal and about your own career prospects in the current school. And the last result is about the impact of the internal information transparency, which again show that it can partially correct favoritism and its adverse consequences on school-wide performance in terms of student test scores. And the lessons we can learn from this is first, economics lesson is that local unfairness could generate global demoralization effect with further reaching productivity consequences within the organization. So when you do something like unfair, when you want to inflict unfairness upon like some of your subordinates, you should not only just care about those who are directly affected, right? Care about how they will retaliate against you. It's also about what other people, other third-party employees in your firm or in your organization are thinking about this and responding to this in terms of their effort provision. It's further reaching than just an effect on who you on the guys you actually treat with fairness or unfairness. And also that's relevant for policy evaluation as well, right? Like the third-party co-workers should be included in any of the evaluation of these managerial practices towards a certain subset of workers in the workplace. And last thing I want to mention is that this paper does not answer the question of what's the impact of switching from principal recommendation to, say, an impartial machine learning in the promotion evaluation system, right? Although we know that like using this principal recommendation method, they are biased and that can generate some negative incentive effects, but it's not saying that like by switching to like just dropping the principal's role in this promotion process is a better solution, because we cannot answer like what's the principal's incentives, and by granting them the discretion they have in the recommendation system, will they motivate the school principals to do better in other aspects or whatever? We don't know. So basically the questions we answer in this paper are partial. It's not like a general equilibrium of a switch of the policy that some of you might have in mind. That's something I want to mention.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this was a very, very clear presentations and amazing results. So As always, we are now open up the floor to questions. If you have a question, if you want to ask a question, please let me know through the chat. You can either just type in your name or just let me know you want to ask a question. I can call on you. Or you can, if you like, directly type the question into the chat and I can read it out. To start things, I have a couple of questions / comments, a little bit going. One is a little bit of clarification, the other one goes a little bit further than what you have done. So one thing I was wondering when I saw these results on promotion and ties and the overall effects on student learning afterwards is you're essentially treating everything as if the original composition of the school is almost random. And then some of these teachers happen to have ties to the principal. So, and I mean, given the data you have, and I mean, it may be a different paper, I don't know, but given the data you have, what would be of interest is to see first how are these teachers recruited into the school in the first place? And what are the characteristics of being recruited? So if the principal happens to be from the same hometown or the same small hometown or from the same college, does that change the probability of becoming a junior teacher at the school? And then the likely outcome is you become a junior teacher at the school, probably with the prospect that you have much better career opportunities there. And it would be interesting to see if these ties, if when it comes to the initial recruiting, if these ties are beneficial or detrimental. Do they recruit junior teachers just based on being from the same hometown, or maybe from the same college, or maybe they have better information on that person? So that essentially they use these ties as like to get around the like the asymmetric information problem. And it turns out that the teachers who join the school with some kind of ties are on average better or worse from the beginning. This is the first question I would have. The second one is on the incentive. So you have these results that when it comes to, when you look at applicants, that applicants with ties exert a higher effort and improve, whereas applicants without ties exert a lower effort. This is just in the year of the evaluation, right? Or is this, I think this is something that wasn't very clear to me just from the paper and from your presentation. It's these incentives. I think it's slide 20, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere. If these incentives are just in the year of the promotion.
I think it's yeah, I think if you look at the right panel here, it's persistent. But let me yeah, I think we like technically we should be comparing the red one with the black one and the blue one with the gray one. I think we may see some persistence here in 2 years, I guess, but not very significant. Yeah, but yeah, that's one thing to take a closer look at. Yeah.
Thank you. And then I think related to that, also in some of the other graphs, I don't remember which slide it was. I mean, you had a very large immediate effect in the year of the promotion or the year thereafter, and then over time they would disappear. They would essentially go back to the mean. And I was wondering if this is a result of people being very annoyed at this decision at first, but then over time they just deal with it, or is it the result of the attrition that like certain teachers just leave the school after they have been denied promotion?
Oh, like for the intensive margin, I restrict to the set of teachers who are present in the school from -3 to +2. So basically, I require a balanced panel. So it's not like a sample problem. It's like within the same set of teachers, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
so like
And
these things are not like complicating each other. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you. Then the last comment, I mean, this is more question how you want to take this further, because I mean, at the very end of your paper, and the very end of this presentation, you went into this transparency policy and the effects of these. And I mean, the way you tackle this for the time being is essentially as a little bit of an add-on, where you just run a different diff on the city being treated or not being treated with this particular policy. Now, there has been a lot of literature in the recent years. I mean, a lot of literature came out how to deal with these particular different way of one unit that has been treated. I mean, from the Abadi
Yeah.
paper in the 2000s, and then now more recently we have these papers on matrix completion methods, and I think it's now called synthetic diff and diff. There is a recent paper out. I was wondering if this is something you want to take further and which methods you're thinking about. Again, if like properly done, it may actually be a separate paper to what you did before.
Yeah, I think I am trying to like adopt the new methods, like from the event study where you basically have like the post treatment and pre treatment, like basically like in like the rollout of policies. I'm like now trying to incorporate this new methods. Yeah, so I haven't like updated that, but it's absolutely the one way to go before I submit the paper actually. Yeah.
Very well. So we still have 7 minutes left. Anyone else wants to chime in with a question?
I have just one
Yeah, go ahead.
clarification question, because I'm surprised that looking at the graduation exam result and entrance exam. So the graduation exam, so here, I'm about entrance exam. So if I understand correctly, the entrance exam is the scores of students who are entering this school, right?
Yes.
So I don't know about the Chinese education system, but it sounds like students can choose which school to enter. So they know about the reputation of that school. So
Yes.
maybe, so that's voluntary, the system.
Yeah, so you can basically there are like several tiers of schools, but within each tier there are several schools you can choose from, and they're basically competing with each other. That's the case in China, and so basically you see the impact of on the entrance exam score starts from year 1 here. So basically, it doesn't affect the entering cohort of this year. It's only when you affect the graduation score of the graduating cohort, and that information gets like dissipated to the prospective students, and then like they respond in terms of whether they would like to choose your school. So basically, like you see, like the lag in timing in the response of the entrance exam score also makes sense that it's through this competition among schools in terms of their attractiveness to prospective students, measured by how well their students perform in the graduation exam or the college entrance exam.
No, so I guess the impact on teachers' performance will be also influenced by this, because once the reputation has gone down, then the students with say a lower the competency will enter the school. So as the average competence of the students the students coming to the school is going down, then the impact of any measure on teachers will have different impact as compared to the same interventions on teachers when they have good students.
Yeah,
So,
that's actually a very good point. So basically, although I'm measuring like value added, right? So basically, like it's sort of subtracting the initial level of the initial academic level of the students, but still teaching good students and teaching bad students can be like it can be like another layer of demoralizing impact, or it could be that like a certain teacher is better at teaching a certain type of students, right? So here basically it could be that like these effect kicks in. I 100% agree with that. So that's something to keep in mind. And because but we don't sort of have a good counterfactual to say that like had the competence of the students remaining at the same level, then what would be the counterfactual value added change be? So that just I think somewhat a caveat we have to keep in mind, and the best we can do is to when we estimate those value added measures, also taking into account some of the non-linearities in the previous like scores of students, and that's something we imperfectly do in the estimation of the value added measures itself, but there is caveat there. I agree with you. Yes.
oh, okay. Yeah, so yeah, in general, yeah, this result is very fascinating. So that has an impact on any kind of on unfairness can have an impact on losing good teachers, but also good students. So yeah, this presentation is very informative and very interesting. Thank you very much.
And thank you for the comments and questions.
Okay,
And
thank you. We're almost out of time. Let me quickly ask if anyone else has a question. If so, please feel free to just chime in right now. So if not, before we are closing this down, I posted a link in the chat to a very short 10-second survey. So please make sure to fill it out. This feedback is very important for us to improve our seminar series. And then I would like to thank Xuan for like a great presentation, very interesting, very fascinating results. And I'm looking forward to see this thing published.
thank you, guys. Thank you, Tobias.
Okay, thanks a lot. So have a good day, everyone. Good morning.
Thank you.